This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
It's another round. It's the final round, and it might be the final round for good, unfortunately, here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. We get around going here at Silverstone in just a couple of moments' time. I'm Connery Maddock, and I'm joined by Gary Weaver for this one. And, well, the final stage for the 2K Skip Barber World Cup will take place at the Silverstone circuit, the crown jewel of British motorsports, and drivers are currently taking themselves to the track in terms of qualifying here this evening. But Gary, it's been a long season, it's been a decent season, and we'll get to see the finale in just a couple of moments.
It's going to be absolutely fun here for this 3.66 mile track, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how these drivers will handle this. It's pretty much a very large track, 20 laps here tonight, so it's going to be, again, just really going to be interesting to see how these drivers take to this track, how they handle it, and especially with these some of these long straights that they have, if we have any more passing zones, or if some drivers can make corners work for passing as well.
Track information up on your screen, of course. 32 degrees Celsius on the track right now, 20 degrees in air, which is a pretty good day as far as us Brits are concerned. Mostly cloudy, though, is certainly the norm when it comes to this country. 38% humidity with winds gusting a little bit, 19 kilometers an hour with 12 miles an hour in metric. But with all of that out of the way, we can get ourselves a little bit of a look at how the championship stands right now. And you can see Julian O'Fray currently in the winning position over Philippe Leber. There's only going to be a couple of points between them, though, because 329 versus 321, not too much of a difference at all. And Greg Zietz is on the outside looking in as well. But this gets more complicated, Gary, when you factor in drop weeks. So we'll have to wait until after the race to see how things are calculated to make sure we can call who the right winner is.
And that's going to be the key thing, is that we're really going to be waiting a little bit more in suspense to make sure that everything, like you mentioned, is calculated correctly. So we will see how this plays out throughout this race. Apparently two pit stop windows for tonight, laps 4 to 8 and lap 12 to 16.
Yep, indeed, 2 pit stop windows, so it makes things a little bit more complicated when it comes to the racing here today. Of course, you now have the qualifying session going on right now, and we can get ourselves the lap times up in just a couple of moments. There we go. We see that no one has set themselves a lap time just yet. We do have drivers that are currently out there. You have the likes of Greg Zietz deciding to take his car out to qualify here. And, well, the interesting thing is here in this particular 2K Skip Bar World Cup, we mention it every time, it's only one lap to try and get yourself a good qualifying time. So it's basically win it or bin it.
And pretty much it's going to be the one lap that really counts for this qualifying session. So don't go too far off the track, or more importantly, like you mentioned, don't bend it, because these tires might play a little bit of problems here for these drivers, maybe depending on how they're going to be taking to this qualifying session. If they're going to be overly aggressive, it's not really going to help them out too much.
It's not. As you see, Greg Zietz is currently heading his way through Stowe Corner, that very, very exciting high-speed right-hander coming towards the end of the lap here as he hits the brakes. Into the left, coming up towards Club Corner. You see the first lap time being set by Sasha Gourlay right now, so he gets himself provisional pole position, but Greg Zietz still within the championship fight. What can he do across the line? What lap time is it going to be? I don't think... Oh, it is. It counts eventually. He gets himself to provisional pole position there for Greg Zietz. That is a lap and a half. It's 1.1 seconds ahead of his closest competitor.
Oh boy, well that's going to be, if that's nerve-wracking, I don't know what is, but that is, well, no, there it is. Simon Edwards comes in clutch with with half a second back from Greg Zietz, so we'll see Julian Alfred comes in at 0.7 seconds away, so really some fast drivers here, all within a second, and sometimes, especially with this track, it definitely matters.
Yeah, it really, really does. And, well, that's all of the flurry of lap times in at pretty much once. We'll get ourselves the starting grid then for the final round of the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. It looks just a little bit like this. Greg Zietz will start in pole position with Simon Edwards on that front row with him. Julian O'Fray starts in P3. Anthony Katz starts P4. Sasha Gorle, P5. Carl Dronke, P6. Paul Malokas in P7. Juansart Bouillon in P8. Edwin Valerino starts 11th with Haroldas Drutas in that 9th and 10th place position on the grid. Rob Adams and Neil Kemp will line up 11th and 12th here today. Gonzalo Calvo and Tran will be 13 and 14 respectively. John Sully and Gustavo Conde will bring things down to P16. Andy Witt, Chris Malcolm and Hans Hoyer will round out the 19 cars that we have to run here today. And, well, cars already taken themselves to the starting grid. Of course, we do have to mention that this might just be the final round of the... Well, it is the final round of the championship. It might just be the final round of that 2K Skip Bar World Cup. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it comes back with a vengeance. But I'm sure that we are all hoping here at Raceport TV that it does make a big impact when it does come back, Gary.
It's going to be, it's been a really exciting season. I'm going to be looking forward to seeing how, if really the updated Skip Barber will play into any effect. The visual differences are vast, and I love it, and I can't wait to see it. So it's making me wait for Tuesday. It seems so close yet so far, but on the bright side, though, like you mentioned, I'll definitely be coming back with a vengeance, hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon, as drivers taking themselves to the starting grid, and they're already revving their engines. We're going to be off and away here for the final round of the season in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup, as now they storm themselves down towards turn number 1. You can see Greg Zietz. He's been able to get himself up into that first place position ahead of Simon Edwards. Anthony Katz and Julian O'Fray will bring things down to P3 and P4, as you can see them going through the right-hander once again, right in this first very twisty sector of the lap. Through the loop they go, and then they get themselves set for the Wellington Straight. It's been a very, very calm start for all your drivers here as they work their way through there. You can see Zietz, Edwards, Cat, O'Fray. That is the current order. There's been a car go off ahead. I think that's Edin Valerino that has had a couple of problems. He's gone off the circuit, and we'll just have to see what exactly has happened to him on the replay.
Yeah, it looks like for Edwin Valerino, he just that side-by-side battle that he was having with Francois Bouillon just took the curb too much, really upset the grip and the tires on the car, and that just ultimately had him spin out. But on the bright side, though, it wasn't really enough, as apparently Gonzalo Calvo has a broken right front.
Oh, Gonzalo Calvo also having a problem, and we just saw that on the end of the replay right there. So we can just cycle things back just a little bit further, see what happens. Oh, that's way too much speed into that corner. Way too much speed, and he just completely plows one of the other cars there. We'll just get to see it again here. Bang, and that is a wheel actually going flying through the air on that other car as well. So Gonzalo Calvo, there's a massive incident there into the left-hander just before Luffield. So now we can get ourselves hopefully returned to the live pictures, and there is the front of the field. While we've been talking about it, though, Greg Zietz still leads this race. You can see Simon Edwards, though, going very defensive to the inside as he gets himself now around the outside of your race leader. I thought it was a defense. Instead, it's going to be attack around the outside of your race leader. Can he do it around there? That is the big question. The question's going to be no, as we're coming towards the end of the first first lap here. I'll get that overlay sorted. There we go. Lap 1 of 20. Simon Edwards still hot on the heels of your current race leader seats.
Yeah, Simon Edwards is absolutely bearing down on the gearbox right now of that number 74, and right now, for the time being, looks like he might have an advantage down the straightaway, but at the same time, he might be visibly backing off, just trying to save a little bit of speed, not really making any moves as of yet, especially into this corner, which in a sense is kind of smart. He could have taken the preferred lane away, but chose, you know what, I'm going to wait just a little bit. You can see that he actually takes a little bit of a more narrow exit compared to Seitz out of that corner, so really at this point, it's kind of just follow the leader and hope for the best.
Yes, it is, and right now you can see the gap between the two of them stands at about 0.4 of a second right now as they head their way on to the hangar straight. And of course, you can see there's still a lot of players in this one. You can see 4 cars right at the front of the field here in the early goings, down in towards the end of the Wellington Straight they go, and now you can see all of them absolutely stacked together, so they have really broken away from the rest of the pack here. It's a 4-horse race right at the front of the field. We'll have to see how the pit stops factor into this, but this is very early going to have this sort of separation.
It's really early on to see, like you mentioned, this kind of separation. It is absolutely massive, and looking at the gap between right now, it's, in a sense, it's kind of uncharacteristic, especially this early on, but right now I'm seeing at least 2.3 seconds between Boulian and Fred, P5 and P4 respectively, and then there's another 2 or so second gap between 6th to 7th and 8th, so it's really a lot. It seems this track has kind of caught some of these drivers off guard a little bit.
This is an absolutely fantastic section. The Maggots and Beckett section, such a joy to drive, at least in sim. Never tried it out in real life, as it turns out, as these guys, down the hangar straight here. Of course, Silverstone built on an old airbase, an old airfield. There's now Greg Zietz Gonna have to go the, just defend the inside line here because Edwards is trying to work his way around in that number 52 car around the outside of Stowe. Well, looks like he is going to make that one work, at least to have a little bit of a challenge here towards the end of the lap. And he's able to make it side by side once again, but through the outside line, through Cloud Corner, that's not quite going to work. Things get quite congested coming up towards that section, so he just has to drop behind before the apex arrives. But again, it's Greg Zietz right at the front of the field holding strong.
It's holding strong, and it's doing a great job right now for the time being, but now it's going to be a matter of really what exactly is not exactly the benefit, but more how Greg Zietz is able to really stay out in front. Of course, it's a combination of being fast and kicking corners as smooth and quickly as possible, but at the same time, it's always a disadvantage. Sometimes there's a point where, like right now, coming up to this long straightaway here, you kind of have the advantage of the draft, and I think Simon Edwards might be looking to take advantage of it, closing the gap a little bit, peeks out to the left-hand side by side for the lead, as I go down into this left-hand turn, and looks like it'll be now Simon Edwards passing Greg Seitz for the lead. I don't think Seitz will be able to really take the advantage.
Ooh.
No, he will not. So, is there something behind?
No, that was Simon Edwards getting a little bit of a slide on trying to get that pass done, but he is able to squeak his way by. So your new race leader will be Simon Edwards, but of course you have those other two cars in line that can still make a big impact in this race. You have Anthony Cat, you have your championship leader of Julian O'Fray having a good race as well. So he looks like he might be able to come away with the entire championship at the end of things here, mostly because Philippe Lebert, well, he's not currently signed up to the race, so that one's a little bit anticlimactic there between those guys. But then again, Greg Zietz, also involved in this championship, could really make a big impact here, but we won't have anything confirmed until the very end of the race. So we'll just have to wait to the post-race show to be able to find that one out. But Greg Zietz, he needs every single point possible here because he is a good couple behind O'Fray. He's currently third in the championship as opposed to Julian O'Fray's first. But he needs to put as many cars between himself and the Frenchman as possible.
All right, now it doesn't really seem to be too much of the case, and of course, right when I say that, there he goes to the right-hand side, trying to at least peek into the inside of Simon Edwards, practically nearly drifting throughout that corner. It's still amazing to think that he can kind of throw these cars around as Simon Edwards really goes protective and defensive, and luckily, it just makes it into this series of corners just fine. Kind of pulls a little bit of a gap there on these exits, making very, very smooth turns and being very keen as to not get any tires on those curbs.
Of course, you see your championship leader riding on board with him right now. He's at the very tail end of this train, just doing exactly what he needs to do, just keeping himself in contention, just hauling points each and every race. And if you finish this consistently, then that is overall positive in terms of your championship. We just saw Greg Dietz have another little look on Edwards coming through the first sector there, but not able to make his way by as Edwards, as that race leader, just pushes a little bit wide coming through the loop there. So these guys really, really dueling it out at this stage. We do have a couple of battles behind as well that might be of note. Of course, you can see things are spread out a little bit further you look back, but you do have a battle for P9 going on right now. That one is going to be Andy Witt versus John Sully. So those guys looking relatively close on circuit, and there goes Andy Witt down the inside. Nope, not quite enough room to be able to make that one work, but you know, like we see almost every week here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup, it's battling all throughout.
There's a lot battling throughout this track right now, and I saw a few battles between, at least from P12 to P15. They're also in a little line of cars, and they were side by side for a little bit around that same section that Witt and Sully were battling. So pretty much everyone's finding the opportunities around the same portions of the track and trying to capitalize as soon as possible, as Greg Seitz all over the left-hand curb. At least he's got his left side tires on the curbing a little bit, but managing to just keep it under control for the most part and really not upset the suspension enough to really lose any grip. And right now he's just trying to hang on and follow Simon Edwards as quickly as possible and as very closely as possible right now. But I don't think, we might see, depending on what line he takes, he goes to the right-hand side as Edwards goes defensive on the left-hand side. So that means Greg Seitz now goes into the lead. Oh, that was a little bit too close for comfort, but Simon Edwards knows the dimensions of this car very well and able to slot directly behind Greg Seitz right after that pass.
Yeah, you can't lose any more positions than you need to when you're getting past at the very front of a train like that, because it's so easy for those two cars behind just to nip their way through as you have a compromised line coming through the corner. So good heads-up driving there for Edwards, just finding the car's length of space just to be able to slot himself in. But you could just see how much the four cars here have just broken away from absolutely everyone. Between P4 and P5, that gap stands at about 3.5 seconds at this stage. So right now, it looks like it's going to be one of these four cars that are going to be the ones ending up winning the race, unless something happens during the pit stop phase.
And that has begun. Only Paul Malakas and Gustavo Condi have went to pit road, the only two drivers to go to pit road as well, and they're still actually in their pit stalls. And right when I say that, it's for Paul Malakas, it looks like a 9.8 second pit stop as the leaders go side by side right now, as Simon Edwards makes a very good opportune pass right there, and Greg Seitz immediately slots right down behind Gustavo Condi with an 11-second pit stop, but Simon Edwards back into the lead.
Yep, he is, and this has just been the case. These guys have been basically sharing the race lead amongst themselves just through the opening portion of this race. Maybe just sizing each other up for the latter portions of the race here, because you have to figure out sometimes where your opponent is weakness, where you can get the move done. So you're not having to try and think of how to make the move when you're on those final couple of laps of the race. But as you can see, coming through Copse Corner, now up towards the entrance to the Magnussen-Beckett section. Greg Seitz going to be the car behind the red, white, and very green-wheeled Skip Barber Formula 2000 car. And of course, for the coming season, it's going to be the new remodeled Skip Barber Formula 2000 as well, with the new Lime Rock Park. So I'm very interested, and I'm very excited to see how those two pieces, of upgraded content, are going to turn out here. But as you can see, Greg Seitz through once again. That wasn't really fought though by Simon Edwards. So these guys are basically just slingshotting off each other.
I thought he was going to try and make it. I think he was very tempted to try something in that pass corner on that right-hander just after that pass, but I think he decided, well, you know what, I'll just stick to the inside and hope for the best, but if nothing happens, then nothing happens. So they'll still keep trading that lead around that same part as well. So it's definitely not the first time that we've seen leaders here in the 2K World Cup Series trade the lead back and forth lap by lap. So now it's just a matter of really who's going to be going the pit road. Really, it might be everybody this time. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what strategy these drivers choose. There's only 2 others that went to pit road, Neil Kemp and Andy Witt.
Yep, just 2 others. So just yet to see the vast majority of drivers hit their way into the pit lane. We're currently riding on board though with Andy Witt, who's been so patient here, 3rd in line in this leading train. He's had everything happen in front of him, and he's just been feeding off the double toe of the leaders, and he could get a lot of fuel saving done in this position, Gary. So he can have a much shorter stop than those 2 guys that are currently just slingshotting each other for the race lead.
I think you mean Anthony Cannon. I believe you said
Yeah,
Anthony Witt, but yeah. Yeah, he's definitely doing a good job. Even Julian Alfred, he's kind of been falling back a little bit. He's also been making his way back up to the gearbox with Anthony Katz. So really it's just a matter of, it might just be this 25 machine that's going to be benefiting from this as much as possible, but no one goes to pit road this time, so they might try to one-stop this, but it's really just a matter of time to see how this will play out.
We will just have to wait and see. There we go. Greg Zeet still leading them coming through that Maggots and Beckett section, and you can see that it's basically just a draft train amongst these 4 cars coming through this lap right now. You spend so much time on the throttle here at Silverstone, such a high-speed circuit, but of course it's not as high-speed as it once was, perhaps, without the alterations that's been done in the last decade or so. With that sort of inner loop section and the new pits lane and things like that. But here we go. We actually see a battle right at the back of the train, because Julian O'Fray has now got himself up into 3rd position over Anthony Cat. So Cat gets cycled towards the very back of the train. Edwards trying to look around the outside, but Zeet, he's been absolutely dumped from the race lead. He spins well, not quite fully around. He's able to get back going. But that is not what you would have wanted to have happen right at the very front of the field. Let's get another look at it on the replay. Just take us through, Gary.
Oh, man, that was out of absolutely nowhere. Simon Edwards tried to fall right back in behind, misjudged the speed between himself and Seitz, and that just spun Seitz around. Luckily, he saved it, but Seitz, I feel like, could have, and probably should have at least, went into pit road and at least tried to stretch it out from there instead of staying out, because now he has absolutely no draft to work with, and Anthony Cat really is kind of benefiting from this a little bit, but at the same time, he's going to be in no man's land.
Yeah, we can get another look at it. It's Greg Zeet. You can, from the very back of him, you can see Edwards going to the outside there, then coming in towards the right-hander of Stowe. Just a little bit of contact, and I would say that's very much accidental there on the part of Edwards. He definitely didn't intend to do that. It's just sometimes the margins are so close here. Especially when it comes to the final rounds of a championship. But right now, returning to the live pictures, no one from this leading pack deciding to head their way down to the pit lane just yet. And you bring up a great point, because Greg Zeet could have just tried to take that opportunity and come down on towards the lane to try and get his stop done, as a couple of cars have. We've had Anthony Cat come down in, we have Paul Malukas, Gustavo Conde, Andy Witt, Neil Kemp, and Harold Strutas having made a stop so far this race. So still, over 50% of the field yet to come down on towards the pit lane.
Yeah, so it looks like everyone might be having a universal agreement on saying, well, you know what, if we can make it this long, maybe if we try and stretch it to lap 10, or coming to lap 11 more specifically, then maybe there will be enough fuel to make it to the end. So pretty much we know as much as the next person on when these drivers are going to pit. Only the drivers really know, so it's just a matter of watching that pit entry lap by lap to see if anyone decides to come down into pit road.
Yeah, but you can see the battle going on for P5 right now between Tran and John Sully. So Sully slowly working his way through the field here, of course, but with the field being as spread out as it is right at the front here, is going to be inordinately more tough from this point forwards. But right now, Tuan Tran and John Sully not going to battle this time in towards Stowe, so they're just going to stay line astern for now and through that fast right-hander. And John Sully just content in staying 2.5 tenths of a second behind, and that is why because he wants to head himself down on towards the pit lane. And Tuan Tran actually deciding to come in at the exact same time as well. So you see a lot of cars, actually a lot of cars decide to come in. Zeitz, O'Fray and Edwards, they are the top 3 cars, and they're the only cars to have stayed out.
Well, there goes that staying to lap 10 theory so far, but it's still possible for the top 3. But like I mentioned, a whole host of cars from right now 4th to 10th all in the pit road, and Carl Dranke has not yet pitted, and he still continues to stay out for the time being.
Yeah, you can see that drivers currently on pit lane. You see Sully there. You see Francois Bouillon as well, working his way through. Sasha Gorley getting himself stopped as well, as those cars now heading out of the pit lane. You can see the pit lane so that's recessed in the track that they have to basically go up a ramp to try and rejoin the racing circuit. But looking towards the front of the field, because it's these guys that currently have not decided to come down on towards the lane just yet, trying to make that field go as long as possible to make the end of the race just that little bit more comfy. But yeah, that is quite surprising that basically the 3 cars at the front decided not to come in, and the vast majority of everyone else decided that well, the end of lap 7 was a good time to pit.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit worried right now if that was the case, and rightly so. But right now it's only your top 5 really now that have yet to pit. But really the closest drivers that we have are the front 2, Simon Edwards and Julian Offret. Greg Seitz is in this case from the leader, 2.6 seconds back, but 2.4 seconds back from Julian Offret. And then there's Chris Malcolm, who's nearly 21 seconds back from Greg Seitz in P3, and then Carl Dranke is 5.1 seconds behind Chris Malcolm, and that's pretty much it for the drivers that have really stayed out. But right now, Julian Offret might be trying to make a little bit of a last gasp effort to try and get into the lead, maybe before pit stops, but taking that wide of an entry might not work. He might try the under, but it will not work as Simon Edwards goes defensive, and Julian Offret is forced to back off here, so they both go into pit road.
Yeah, both going to pit lane. Edwards actually going to gain a little bit of ground there on pit entry as they hit the brakes into there, and they're really leaving nothing on the cards when it comes to pit lane entry. That is for certain. As fantastic view of the new pit building there, but you see them round the corner. As you can see now, got Greg Zeitz have decided to work his way in as well. So Zeitz actually. He's not too far away from these guys, so he's done pretty well to try and recover. It's still going to be a couple of seconds the gap once they come off of pit lane, but it's still not been too bad in terms of that instant. Yes, it's basically, really put a damper on his chances for the race win here today, but you can see him working himself through right now, and we can get ourselves the view behind as well. You can see that, Edwards and O'Fray getting their service done. You see them come out first. There goes Edwards, and then there goes O'Fray. Greg Zeitz will be following him out in just a couple of moments' time. And there we go. He hits himself between those green cones to rejoin the racing circuit. And, well, that's the set of stops over and done with here. And Edwards actually able to gain a lot of time over Julian O'Fray in that pit stop sequence. That gap, wow, that's massive. That's 2 seconds.
Right now, Anthony Capp back up into P3, but that gap is definitely going to be benefiting Simon Edwards for the time being. But at the same time, this might be at least the next, maybe projected laps. We have at least until lap 16 at the latest. Double checking laps 12 to 16. Well, at this point, it's going to be lap 16 or so for these leaders, maybe 17 or 18, but right now, it's just, again, another matter of time as Francois Bouillon, Paul Malakas have both caught up to Greg Seitz.
Yeah, and you see that battle there. A little bit of a train going on for P number 4 right now, as we can see with Greg Zeitz. Well, P4, yes, but if you look at the gap to P5, then that's going to be a third of a second. And what makes things worse is that Francois Bouillon has the draft and Paul Malakas the double toe as well. So Zeitz just really trying to hold on to a P4 spot right now. He's getting about 2.5 seconds off your podium right now. So, unless the back half of this race really goes his way, he's probably not going to be able to do all that much about those guys ahead. So this might just be the battle that he's in for the rest of this race, unless he's able to work something out in terms of a strategy.
And he took the longest pit stop out of the top 4, 16.3 seconds as compared to, I'll say, Simon Edwards with a 13.3. So that 3 seconds of fueling time can matter, but again, it's just, again, still a matter of time, because now, since Greg Seitz has absolutely no draft to work with, he might be using that 3 seconds of fuel just ever so slightly lap by lap, and he might have to come down for a second time and get a short fuel, but really we'll just have to wait and see how he goes about this strategy.
Yeah, this is the closest battle that you have on track right now. P4, P5, P6. You saw just briefly that Paul Malukas able to work his way through on Francois Bouillon, so that order has changed up slightly here. As you can see that Greg Seitz now coming in towards what is going to be the, of course, the right-hander there, and then on the entry to the Maggots and Beckett section. No, I'm getting a little bit disoriented. This is the first sector of the lap, so I'm kind of like about 10 or so years in the past, and well, it's going to be more recent than that, isn't it? Well, I'm getting all of my years mixed up right now, but you know, Copse Corner used to be, of course, you know, the first corner of the lap, but now it's not, and you know, that's been many years the case, but I still get myself mixed up between them sometimes.
Only been a few years, it's fine. But, and it's kind of interesting to see how much tracks have changed in this case. We have Silverstone with this new layout that we're going to have Lime Rock next build this Tuesday, essentially, and oh man, it's just weird to think about. So I think everyone's getting old at this point, but right now Greg Seitz still just sitting P4, but he's got Malakis right on the gearbox, and I have to applaud at least the number 4 machine here. He is not letting go of that P4, and very rightly so. He's got the draft. He's directly behind. He's trying to make almost every opportunity work. Peeks out, slides right in, back behind that number 74. So just a matter of time is really all this is until next pit stops or maybe the end of the race, whichever occurs first. But depending on some fuel levels, I'm assuming it'll be the next pit stops, maybe around lap 16.
Because the race at the front of the field right now has pretty much been noted with the the incident that we had that put Seitz in this position, and of course the very early separation as well. So currently Simon Edwards does lead by about 1.3 seconds over your championship leader Ovo Frey, but seems like P4 and back is where it's at right now. Seitz will have to try and hold on the charge here from Paul Malukas. You can see it down the hanger straight they go, and well, Malukas is going to have to show the nose in towards the right, but of course in no position to make the move. You can see the slide as well from Greg Seitz on the exit of the corner. He's really been driving the wheels off of that thing, and but it's so difficult to try and break the draft here.
And that is I was looking from a little bit of voice back from Francois Bouillon's point of view. That was Malakas kind of dove in there just a little bit, tried to get that opening, but stopped right at the last second. And again, I keep applying the 4 because I'm just very impressed with that. Like you mentioned, he's driving the wheels off this, and Greg Seitz getting his tires in the grass might not work too well, but at the same time, it might help turn the car just ever so slightly. But really on the corner entry, it's something that you don't want to get every single lap, but Billy seems to be hanging on to it very well for the time being, and he might actually be closing in on Anthony Cat here in a few laps.
Yeah, you can see these guys currently sitting around about 6.5 seconds off your leader here, and well, you can see now with Francois Bouillon, he has the basically perfect view of this battle. Sitting that third car in line, he's in a good position to try and capitalize if any of these guys make a bit of contact. And well, coming through the halfway point of this race, still a decent way to go here in this one. Of course, it's one of those races in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup where we do have the factor of 2 pit stops instead of just 1. So we will just have to wait and see how that one works out. Of course, it's going to be quite interesting here in terms of a season finale. But Bouillon right now, he's just basically in the perfect position. Maybe just to do a little bit of fuel saving. Something happens in front of him, and if he can avoid it, then he's going to gain a couple of positions. So I don't envy I really envy the spot that Bouillon's in right now.
And Francois Bouillon is kind of just still hanging onto that back bumper, and right now, a little bit more slideways than most drivers here at this track. But I've been looking through the standings right now, and I think at the moment it might be good to go to Alfred for the points. But again, still just You have to wait, and that second pit stop is going to be crucial. If you thought the first one was, well, wait until the second one as Francois Bouillon goes right down to the right-hand side, and Paul Malaka is almost, I'm pretty sure he's going to try and somehow slingshot his way between Bouillon and Seitz, hoping for that burst of momentum, but that just did not arrive, and unfortunately for Francois Bouillon, nothing gained of that, but really nothing lost as well, so he's still managing to hang right behind that back gearbox of the number 4.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well have a little bit of a go there. You never know. But here, he's eating off little goes. Lucas, good run coming through Club Corner there. Might just set up the move for turn 1. He's certainly positioned himself to be able to challenge there. But it's such a difficult corner to be able to go side by side through turn 1 there. So it's better to just wait a couple of corners, set your move into the right-hander here. But unfortunately, he's lost a little bit too much ground in that situation. You can see how wide the track is going through this section, how inviting it is to dives down the inside. But Maluka is simply not in the position to be able to do so just yet. But here comes another big drafting zone coming down the Wellington Straight. So he's going to get himself another opportunity, maybe here coming towards what is going to be, the first couple of the last couple of corners of the old circuit.
Yeah, personally, I don't believe I've actually seen the old circuit as much.
Well, it's
if
it's the old Silverstone that's on iRacing.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I was referring to. I really don't believe. I think I did. I don't know, but I don't know. The old circuit is interesting in its own way, though, especially with like the differences between then and now. So, kind of a little bit of a piece of history saved between, and still, Paul Malaka is not exactly trying to really make anything work into turn 1, so really, again, still just saving his time. I do applaud that he's trying to figure out a little bit more, a few more places of passing opportunities. Now, even he's putting his left side tires on that curbing that Greg Seitz also uses, so at this point, just really following directly in the tire tracks of Greg Seitz.
Yeah, that is going to be the situation for these guys right now. That is for certain. As these guys work their way down the hangar straight once again. There, Stowe Corner. It's been the site of a lot of action so far this race. They might do so again as Malukas gets very, very close coming into that corner, but still, unfortunately for him, no cigar in that situation. But right now, you can see the lap gaps up on screen for you. Now, as meanwhile, actually, just cancel all the lap because Paul Malukas now, he's been able to work his way down onto the pit lane. So that is an early second stop there, Gary.
It kind of makes sense in the end because he was really pushing hard, trying to make some passes on Greg Seitz. So pretty interesting to see that he would be coming in this early. He might be trying to also stop earlier on than any of the other drivers. Maybe try to get some type of an advantage as well. But we'll see how it plays out for that number 4 machine later on.
Yeah, we can get ourselves a more decent view of this one. I am new to directing these things on Racesport TV, so just cut me a little bit of slack right now as Malukas has been able to get his pit stop service done. That's a 12.8 second stop, and now works his way back onto the racing circuit, and in a bit of clean air as well. So unfortunately for him, he won't have a drafting partner here for the opening couple of laps of his stint. So we'll have to see if he loses any time as a result of that.
Yeah, that time throughout that stint will be a pretty much a key thing, really, to watch out for, especially with how this race has been going, how spread out early on it has been. Well, later on, I should say. Well, yeah, no, early on as well. So essentially throughout this whole race, and really now it's just a matter of who can make it to the end and how much fuel do you have left to really make it to the end, because essentially those are the same questions but reworded. At this point, for some of these drivers, like if you aren't Julien Offret, you really don't have an advantage at this point. You might be luckily to be Francois Bouillon remotely close in the draft to somehow save a little bit of fuel, but really you're just going to be pushing it really insanely hard, like Anthony Cat, who's still in P3 surprisingly, and very interesting to see that after he pitted earlier on, he falls right back into P3 just where he started, or actually one position up from where he started.
You can see this as well. It's a battle going on for the race lead, and you know, despite the decent gap that O'Fray was able to pull out after the Edwards, excuse me, was able to pull out right at the start. You know, these guys have closed back in once again, and O'Fray, well, 4/10 of a second lap, 4.5 tenths of a second lap 10, a little marginal gain lap 11, then lap 12. 5.5 tenths of a second, so really reeling in Simon Edwards and making this one very, very close for the race lead coming through this second stint. And we'll have to see what comes of this one. These guys 6 seconds ahead of your third place driver right now, of Greg Zietz. After Edwards came away with that race lead by quite a margin coming through that first stop, I thought O'Fray, he's going to have a big, big ask to try and close this one down without any draft, but the closer you get, the more draft you get, and now O'Fray is in position to try and take the race lead, similarly so to his championship lead.
And the thing is, Julian Alfred was, 2.5 seconds back or so at the pit exit at the same time, but also kind of played into his advantage because he had a 14.6 second pit stop. How does that play into an advantage? You might be wondering. Well, of course, more fuel. So, but at the same time, now that I say that out loud, Julian Alfred might have used all of his fuel up, all that extra 1.3 seconds worth of fuel to catch back up to Simon Edwards, who now has created a gap. So it's really a little bit of a back and forth battle, and just a matter of who can make it the longest and can you make it to the end. And at that point, you might just want to pit now just to be safe if you know you can't make it to the end.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe. Of course, you still got a couple of laps to work with either way, so to make a decision, do you go as long as you can, do you come down early and try and slot yourself in somewhere where you can gain a lot of time? But you can see the insane slip angles that these skip barbers get coming through the Maggots of Beckett section, but Edwards a little bit better that time around between these two cars, but O'Fray, he's just not going to be too worried about that, considering he just can close up pretty easily regardless, as Edwards had half a mind, good defensive, does take the middle of the track at least until the very last moment before the entry to the right-hander, and you can see O'Fray slightly different line through the corner, actually taking a shallower corner. There we go, Edwards now going to decide to head his way onto the pit lane, so that is going to be your race leader now coming down in. We were just mentioning pit stop strategy, and now we see it in full effect once again. Second set of stops underway.
Yeah, a few drivers have already made their second pit stops, at least the back half of the field. So it's, again, just a majority of really, well, right when I say that, never mind, because here comes the 17 and the 19 into pit entry. So I was about to say there might be another whole host of cars coming in, just a little bit more gradual than the very first time that we had pit stops.
Yep, just a little bit. Sasha Gawler, John Sully working their way into the pit lane right now. So, a couple more cars in to try and get their fuel to the very end of the race. Simon Edwards still stopped in his pit box right now. He's going to come out right about now. 13.2 seconds on his pit stop, as you can see there. 48 seconds total on the pit lane, and that is pretty par for the course as far as these second set of stops goes. He's currently slap bang basically in the middle of the average here, because we've seen some drivers go into the sort of 12.5 second region. We've seen some drivers even stopping for 14 seconds, but Edwards, the middle road.
Edwards is, I think it's the same amount of time they had before, also another 13.3 or so. That might play out into his favor. Now it's just a matter of time, and he, at this point, might be pretty much good to get cycled back into the lead, depending on how your top four are on fuel. Anthony Cat behind Simon Edwards only by about, 5 seconds at this point, so no pressure from the 52 if the top four do go to pit road within these final 5 or so laps.
Julian O'Fray is still out there, of course. He's currently coming down the hangar straight right now, so we'll just see in a good couple of moments whether he actually decides to come down onto the lane or not. But he's currently all on his lonesome right at the front of the field there, so I certainly wouldn't complain if he does decide to come down in. Only a few cars yet to decide to come in and take their second stops, but is Julian O'Fray going to go for it this time around? The answer is going to be no. So O'Fray is going to stay out at least one more lap here, interestingly enough. Greg Zietz, what is he doing? He's not deciding to come down in either. Francois Bouillon, though, bucking the trend, at least in terms of the top three, he does decide to bring that Orion Race Team car in.
And decides to go into pit road this time around, and here comes Edwin Valerino as well, the second driver from the top four. So now it's really a matter of a little bit of a subtle battle between Seitz and Offray. And right now, again, I'm still thinking that 13 or that 2 or so second pit stop, better second pit stop by Seitz might be enough to just stretch it out, maybe another lap or two, but at the same time, again, just a matter of really waiting to see if there's enough, because, well, we can't really entirely tell. So I'll have to see if Julian Offray decides to come in this time around, and hopefully he does, because the longer he stays out, the more he's going to be put at a disadvantage when it comes to the final few laps.
Yeah, Zietz with about a 6-second gap to your race leader right now, so you know, he's nominally when it cycles all the way through, he's actually going to be cycling into P3, but we'll just have to see where this guy comes down in towards the lane. I don't think he is going to be able to. Well, he's still got a bit of time on this lap to try and decide whether to come in or not. But it's going to be leaving it a little bit late here for Julian O'Fray, especially considering that he has no one, in terms of a drafting help up there. But the thing is, he has pretty decent clear air pace already, so I wouldn't be too worried if you're O'Fray here, unless that car of Simon Edwards is setting absolutely brilliant laps right now. And well, currently it's actually O'Fray setting the best of them, because that was a 2:34.396 for Edwards last time against a 2:24.340 for O'Fray. So O'Fray just marginally faster, maybe able to keep Edwards at bay despite Edwards coming down in. Maybe that's just a little bit of a heavier fuel load that Edwards is dealing with right now.
Might be that heavier fuel load, and well, nope, there it goes into pit road. So coming to 4 laps to go. Does Greg Seitz follow? He does. So now it's going to be Simon Edwards getting cycled through into the lead, and now it's a little bit of a race on pit road. Greg Seitz trying to get as much time on pit entry as possible. He was just under the 34 mile per hour speed limit on pit entry, so very lucky break there for that 74.
A little puff of smoke for the car in the background as they work their way onto the pit lane. But Julian O'Fray now gets himself, aiming for his box. Where is the car of Simon Edwards? That is going to be the big question. Where's the car going to be when he comes off of the pit lane? But the thing is, Julian O'Fray getting his pit stop service done now. You can see him there. But meanwhile, you can see Simon Edwards heading his way out of the final corner. He's going to get himself across the start-finish line here. Julian O'Fray, that's a very, very short stop indeed. He actually does come out well ahead here of Simon Edwards. That was a 10.1 second stop there for Julian O'Fray. We haven't seen that throughout the entire field, not even close. There's no one in the 11-second mark, let alone 10.
A 9.4 second stop for Greg Seitz.
Ooh, so yeah,
Man.
These guys
definitely trying to short fuel as much as possible to try and beat Simon Edwards in some way, shape, and form, but at the same time, at what cost can it be?
Yep, there is the gap between your race leader and second place. Julian O'Fray, 3.5 seconds to the good right now in this particular battle. Has he short-filled it? Does he have to do a little bit of fuel management for the end of the race? Or has he already been doing it throughout the entirety of this race and has been able to just take a very little fuel at the end of the race to try and get himself home? That is the very big question. And it's going to be set the stage for the final couple of laps here of the 2K Skip Barber World Cup for this season. The championship pretty much sealed at this stage. Julian O'Fray definitely, if he comes away with this race win, with the points gain that'll have over Greg Zietz, so that shouldn't be a problem for him. But if we can have a final flourish here with a battle for the race lead at the very end of the season, I'd certainly be happy.
And now it's just really a matter of waiting to see if Simon Edwards can close the gap between himself and Alfred. But Hey, everyone is going to be all eyes on the intervals between the entire top 3 at this point. I'm half checking myself right here just to make sure, but yeah, it's kind of fluctuating now between about 3.4. It's hovering about 3.4 or so seconds between Edwards and Alfred for P1. That's how it remains for the time being. So really, 7 Edwards either has to set, like you mentioned earlier, blistering lap times, or Alfred messes up a long string of corners and puts himself at a bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, Francois Bouillon and Anthony Cat are looking relatively close. They're just because at the very back at some of these static shots here. So you can see as Julien Frey works his way through onto the straight there, and you'll see Bouillon and Cat heading their way through the final corner. So those 2 cars looking relatively close here for the final couple of laps. And let's actually get themselves up on the broadcast. There we go. So there is Francois Bouillon trying to hunt down that driver of Anthony Cat. This will be one of the final battles to finish off your race here. And it's going to be a battle to see who finishes just that little bit higher up inside of that top 5.
I was about to make a lap time comparison, but Julien Alfred, since he went to pit road the last time around, excuse me, that's not going to be the case because he has a 2-minute 55-second lap time, but again, he went to pit road. So as for 7 Edwards, he did get a 2:24.888, so not exactly comparable to anything, but, well, the one thing that is always reliable is the interval, and that has closed by at least 2/10. So 7 Edwards is closing the gap, but very, very slowly, lap by lap.
Yeah, and not going to be enough with about 3.3 seconds between them right now. But speaking of threes, 0.3 of a second between Anthony Cat and Francois Bouillon for P4 on the circuit. And you can see Bouillon just tucked inside that slipstream now. Going to be closer, going to be within, well, getting towards within 1/10 of a second in the way through Cop's corner. And now Bouillon, a lot of... well, a bit of sliding on the exit there, but he's able to hold on to it. Here comes the move then down the inside at the first part of Maggots and Beckett. Says here we go then between these two as they dance around those apexes. Bouillon, has he been able to secure position here? I believe he has. I think he's worked his way through and he solidifies his position ahead now. But what a ballsy move there to go down the inside at Maggots and Beckett. It is possible, but it's a very tough move to try and pull off. And now Anthony Cat might just have a response to it coming in towards Stowe this time around. 18 laps of 20 going to be complete once these guys head their way through the final sector. But Bouillon very quick into Stowe corner. Has he overdone it here? Anthony Cat looking to try and come back, but too far back in this case. They're still going to try for it though, and well, Bouillon very defensive in these late stages, and why wouldn't you?
That was kind of a good move there by Anthony Cat, waiting a little bit, kind of putting a little bit of pressure on the back of Francois Bouillon, having him take a little bit of the outer line as well, but he continues to wait, so Anthony Cat might be waiting now as it's 2 laps to go for the final lap and maybe the last few corners to try and make a move, or he might go for it now, the same thing that Bouillon did last time around, but that just will not be the case. He still continues to look and hover on the openings of Francois Bouillon, but right now it seems to, for the time being, has stagnated just a little bit, but Anthony Cat is not letting P4 go down without a fight.
He's not trying to work his way in. He's got about 2 laps to be able to pull this one off. Let's see if he's able to inside the slipstream now, coming down the Wellington straight. And Cat, he's playing it very, very passive right now. Very timid. There's Bouillon going very, very deep into the corner though, but he's still able to make a late apex regardless of that fact. Anthony Cat now starting to be aggressive with the car. Body language sensing that he wants to try and gain every single little 100th of a second possible coming through these corners, and now you can see him closing up with the draft. Might just have an opportunity into maybe not Cop's corner, but maybe into the Maggots and Beckett section, and able to pull off the exact same pass that Bouillon was able to pull off on him just a lap ago. But right now, Anthony Cat still a lot of work to do as they work their way through to the start of that section, and Cat doesn't quite have the overlap to be able to work with coming through the sweeping S's. Yeah,
still props to him for continuing to try and keep that position as much as possible, at least stay with Francois Boullion. This might be the time to make a move down the straightaway. Oh, a little bit of a close exit there, but side by side they go, and this might be all Anthony Cat this time. By down the straightaway, clears the 92 slots almost up in front, and he'll have the preferred lane here on the sweeping right-hander, and he'll just track out a little bit wider than I thought, but right now, between he and Boullion, as Boullion might make a look down to the left-hand side, decides against it. And now it's really just a matter of time to see if that will be the case for this final lap, as Julian Offret has taken the white flag.
Yes, he has, and there is the man at the front of the field, at the top of the point standings as well. It's been a brilliant season here for Julian Offret. And it's been a pretty flawless first race as well. Well, not first race, last race as well. You know, he's been involved in battles here and there, but he's basically aced things in terms of the strategy here today. So he's going to be pretty comfortable coming to the end here. Just for just comparison's sake, we can just have a look at the gap. Edwards has been able to make up a couple of tenths of a second over these past couple of laps. You can see 1.5 tenths of a second and about 3 tenths of a second, but that simply is not enough in the grand scheme of things when the gap is above 3 seconds towards those final stops. But, you know, Simon Edwards, he's had a decent season as well. He can't be going out feeling that he could have gotten more here. Julian Offret has been doing very well this season. Consistent finishes, not always coming away with a race win, but, you know, always keeping himself in contention with top 5s and top 3s. And now he's about half a lap away from taking the championship.
Half a lap away from, I guess in this case officially, or maybe unofficially still, at least at this point, taking away the championship. Amazing season for Julian Offret, and has been pretty incredible. So might be roughly 5 minutes or so after the race, essentially. Everything might be all updated and up to date in terms of points, but for Offret, absolutely incredible season and great job on his strategy so far as well.
Yeah, very, very good job indeed. And, well, of course, you do have Francois Boullion and Anthony Cat. That might just be a thing for P5 and P4 at the very end of the race here. But Julian Offret, 2-stop race, 1-stop race, it doesn't seem to matter to the Frenchman. He's working his way coming up towards that final sector in just a couple of moments, and he'll come across the line to win the final round of the season in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup, and unofficially the championship for this season as well. Julian Offret through the final corner, and he's able to come away with it. Julian Offret wins at Silverstone and wins the championship as well. You can see how happy he is, weaving that Skip Barber Formula 2000 car across the circuit in towards turn 1. We see the battle between Anthony Cat and Francois Boullion across the line. I think Francois Boullion has just been able to make that one work for P4, so that was a last-ditch move there to try and get himself ahead. We'll see exactly what has happened here on the replay. You could see them going side by side, coming up towards the final corner, and as close as he liked coming through there, off the corner, across the line. Boullion, that must have been so close there across the line. Do you have the official gap there, Gary?
Between these two, looks to be just under, that's very strange, unfortunately, just under a tenth of a second. At least it looks to be 0.012 seconds, or at least 0.022 seconds between those two. That was a very close margin and very exciting battle for both of them coming across that start-finish line right there. That is absolutely incredible for Anthony Cat to try and have a last-ditch effort. I'm surprised he stuck to the right-hand side and somehow made that stick as well. So incredible driving by both those two.
Yep, incredible job for the battle for P4 in the dying moments of the race. But with all of that said and done, we're just going to show you your the official race results here for the final round of the season in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. It will be Julian Offret coming away with the race win and of course the championship as well. We'll still have to wait in confirmation in terms of the calculations for that one, but Simon Edwards, try as he might, keeping himself in contention throughout the race, comes home in second place, 2 seconds behind your race leader. Greg Zietz finishes P3. He was always on the outside looking in on this one, and an unfortunate bit of contact at the front of the field cycles him back, cycles him out of contention, finishes on that final step of the podium. Francois Bouillon able to hold on to P4 from Anthony Cat right through the final corner, and then Gustavo Conde finishes P6, Tuan Tran P7, Edwin Valerino P8, John Selly P9, and Haroldas Drutas in that 10th spot. Neil Kemp will finish 11th with Sasha Gole in P12. Hans Hoyer finishes 13th. Carl Dronke in P14. Rob Adams, P15. Paul Vokas, Andy Witt, Chris Melkin, and Gonzalo Calvo will round out your 19-car grid here today. With the racing done, we're going to go on to a post-race show in just a couple of moments' time, but don't go away because you'll want to see what the drivers have said after a brilliant season here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. everyone, and welcome back to the post-race show here for the final round of this season of the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. A very decent race we've just had here at Silverstone Circuit to finish things off, and it's Julian O'Fray coming away with the race win, and of course officially now the championship as well. And it's a well-deserved championship from O'Fray. Not the most fancy driver, not the most flashy, Gary, but still able to put up those consistent results, which nets him all of those points.
That's a great job, and like you mentioned, that consistency did matter enough to have a 19-point difference between himself and Greg Seitz for the lead. 384 points for Julian O'Fray, and then Greg Seitz with 365 points. So absolutely incredible, and not, like you mentioned, not too flashy of a finish, but at the same time, the strategy is really what mattered here throughout this race.
Yeah, it really, really did. And of course, you can see the recap of the race results up on screen for you now. Julian O'Fray coming away with the race win by around about 2 seconds there, plus or minus a tenth of a second. But we do have drivers ready and waiting to get themselves ready for an interview. I'm just going to bring John Sully in here, who finished just inside that top 10, P number 9 for Sully. And Gary, you have questions for him.
Here with John Sully, who started P15, finished in the top 10. A great way to end the season as well, with only, again, 2 pit stops. How are you approaching, how did you decide to approach this race after some drivers had extended their fuel runs after the projected pit stop windows?
Yeah, I never quite know what to do with fuel stops. I'm notoriously bad at them, and I was again today. I mean, I came out in the second stop about 5 seconds or more behind Sasha, who I went in just behind, so I need to work on my pit stops. I'm really not very good at them. I never quite calculate the right amount or when to pull out. But anyway, just wanted to say congratulations to Julien, and that's a great thing to win the championship. And also thank you very, very much to Philippe for running the league for, I believe it's 5 years now. He's done a great job, and we all do appreciate it.
It's been an absolutely incredible season, incredible past few seasons as well. And looking back at this season as a whole, what are your thoughts on this? Because it was a pretty interesting season for sure, with the differences of trucks that we've had.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I've only done, I think, 4 or 5 races. I mean, I've got a young daughter who's taking a lot of my time, so I probably will get to do, well, I won't now, Philippe's put it on hold, but a little bit later I might get to do more of a full season. But from the races I've done, I've really enjoyed them, and I think the new Skippy's been fun too. The fact that the tyres are so cold, and I really struggle to get them up to temperature. How these guys do it in the quali, the 1 lap quali, I don't know, but it's been a challenge and it's been fun, and the racing's been as good as ever.
Before we go ahead and let you go, anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to for, in this case, your 9th place finish here tonight?
Yeah, just thanks to Positive Sim Racing, and I say, and to Philippe. I think we all appreciate what he's done for the league. I know it's not always been easy, but I think everyone wants the league to be the best it can be, and that's the ways everyone goes with it, and it's been great fun. Thank you.
That's been great fun. Thanks for your time, and we hope to talk to you again at some other time.
Well, there we go. John Sully comes home in P number 9 here today in that number 19 car. And, well, that's going to be it in terms of the interviews here today. But, of course, you know, with all the stuff surrounding the series right now, of course, Philippe Lebert, the series, basically admin deciding to put the series on hold, maybe for a short time, maybe for a long time. We do not know, but hopefully it won't be a long time here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. It will always have a home here on Racesport TV. That is for certain, no matter in which form it takes. But with that, with the season done, I've been Connery Maddock. I've been joined by Gary Weaver for the vast majority of this season. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this. I very much appreciate you tuning in. Of course, thanks to Istvan Balo for the TV cameras as well, and of course the many producers that we've had over the course of this season as well. Will Vincent, Hugo Luis, Paul Smith as well, joining in there. But another season in the books, and hopefully a couple more to come. We might just have to wait though. I've been Connery Maddock. I've been joined by Gary Weaver. That's been this season of the 2K Skip Barber World Cup.